What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week we have UFC Azerbaijan Khalil Rountree versus Jamal Hill in the main event. Solid card overall, and without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right into the full card predictions. First fight on the card, we got Usman versus Hamdy Abdelwahib. Look, Hamdy won in his fight versus Jamal Pogues. Definitely a robbery. Jamal Pogues, I think, is a little bit more skilled than a Usman. Muhammad Usman, definitely a very physical fighter, but has zero technique. Literally can't even throw a right hand without his foot coming off the ground. Doesn't have a jab. Literally has no strike selection. He's just an absolute brute. A very good athlete, but just no technicalities. Hamdy, last time out imposed his will, but he just really doesn't have good technique either. Neither of these guys are very good with the striking. I don't see Hamdy using his wrestling background, didn't use it. Too much success against Jamal Pogues. He's the slightly better fighter in terms of the technicalities, I would assume. But, low-level heavyweight fight here, difficult to call. I'll take Usman just based off of his physicality. I think he might be able to just kind of press Hamdy into the fence. The loss versus Thomas Peterson isn't terrible. Not a great look, but nonetheless, give me Usman to get the job done here. Maybe he can replicate his brother's performance from last week. Next fight on the card, we got Tagir versus Maksum. Maksum won his UFC debut versus Tyson Nam, got a decision there, lost after winning a pretty clear first round against Charles Johnson, knocked down Charles Johnson in the first, and then lost the two later rounds. He's only had the two UFC fights, so not a lot to go off of. Solid striker on the feet, decently well-rounded. He's one of these Kazakh fighters, pretty good everywhere, but Tagir Ulanbekov, been in the UFC a long time. We know he has a very good submission game. You look at the submission wins versus guys like Cody Durden. I believe he submitted Nate Maness as well. Those are decent wins. Last time out versus Clayton Carpenter, a very solid prospect, undefeated guy, well-rounded. And Tagir, won a clean decision there, 30-27, got the better of all the wrestling exchanges. His, striking looked to be improved against a guy that was quick and powerful with solid hands in Clayton Carpenter. I think Tagir Ulanbekov is going to be able to cruise to a decision here. Training with guys like Islam Khabib for his entire life. You got to imagine he's just going to be, in terms of just his baseline, just a lot higher level than an Maksum, who, I don't hate the Charles Johnson loss. I don't hate it, but give me Tagir Ulanbekov, more well-rounded, more UFC experience. The loss to Tim Elliott, that's a crafty vet, a lot of experience. I don't hate that loss too much. It was a split decision. Yeah, give me Tagir here. I won't be surprised if he gets a submission, but I'll take him to win a decision, utilizing his wrestling, kind of similar to the Clayton Carpenter fight. Next fight on the card, Jung Young Park, the Iron Turtle, versus Ismail Nurdiev. Ismail Nurdiev used to be in the UFC, got cut, came back at UFC 308, was able to beat Bruno Silva, but we know that Bruno Silva is completely checked out. He's looked pretty awful in his last couple of fights, so I really, don't respect that win, frankly. I mean, it just very low level, and Bruno Silva didn't put up any fight whatsoever. Jung Young Park, the Iron Turtle, on the other hand, he is going to put up a fight. Has been doing decent in the UFC, took the early loss in his career to RoboCop, got knocked out there. Lost to Andre Muniz in what was a very close fight. He had more damage in that fight, but, Andre Muniz being able to get the grappling going, a lot of fence control. Not the best look from the Iron Turtle. Did get a win last time out versus Brad Tavares, which was a split decision, close fight, but, we saw the pressure, we saw the boxing, we saw the, ability to mix it up on the fence, change levels when he needs to. He's a smart fighter, he's well-rounded, and, you can't really look at any part of his game and say, he's really lacking there. But he doesn't stand out anywhere. Decent submission game. He does have some subs in the UFC. I'm going to take the Iron Turtle here. Higher level of competition. I trust in his pressure, does consistently move forward, doesn't have bad defense, and, I think he's able to get 2 wins on the bounce here. Ismail Nurdiev, he was able to get that win against Bruno Silva, but this is a whole different level of competition, and, he's a well-rounded fighter, but I think these two are going to match up very similarly stylistically, where Jung Young Park is just going to be able to do enough, get the better of enough exchanges, grappling and on the feet to win a 29-28. So that's what I'll pick. Give me the Iron Turtle, 29-28. Hung Ko versus Oban Elliot. Hung Ko beat Igor Cavalcanti on the Contender Series. Solid win there. Looked good in that fight, but the competition just isn't that great. Oban Elliot, Cage Warriors fighter, has came into the UFC, been looking good. He beat Val Woodburn and, didn't really, show us too much in that fight. Got rocked against Val Woodburn, but Woodburn does hit hard. Lower level guy, but still got the job done there really easily. Oban Elliot, well-rounded fighter, has good grappling. Reminds me of kind of a Paddy Pimblett in the way that he, is very good with his grappling. You saw that on the Cage Warriors in the regional scene. And ever since he's gotten to the UFC, against Preston Parsons, he did very, very well with his cage work. The striking looked to be improved in that fight as well. And, against Basil Hafez, it almost looked like Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler dominated that fight. Less grappling, really was on the feet, just piecing him apart with long-rangey strikes, was accurate, and then eventually got a round 3 TKO. Very nice overhand right to knock out Basil Hafez. So, beating Preston Parsons by decision, dominant performance there, and then beating Basil Hafez in the fashion that he did. I like what I see out of Oban Elliot. I think that the minus 500 price tag is realistically, I think that's justified here. I think Oban Elliot is a very good prospect. I think he's going to go far, and I think he's going to be able to win this via stoppage. So yeah, give me Oban Elliot to win this via round 2 TKO. I really like what I'm seeing from him. I mean, I think that he's going to be able to make it pretty far in this division. I'd like to see Oban Elliot fight Jacoby Smith after Jacoby Smith literally rolls up Nico Price and smokes him like a joint. I don't know why they made that matchup. Jacoby Smith literally just beat Preston Parsons, but I get it, got to build the prospect. But yeah, give me Oban Elliot versus Jacoby Smith next. That's a great fight. All right, next fight on the card, my boy Bogdan Grad versus Muhammad Naimov. Look, Bogdan Grad, if you're not a hardcore, you may not know, but Bogdan Grad is the new marauder on the block. He is like a mixture between Yuri and Dricus du Plessis. He's got good grappling. He does go for the submissions. We saw that on the regional scene. The guy just fights like an absolute junkyard dog. Zero technique, zero regard for defense. Kind of like a Benoit Saint Denis. Swings from the hips, super aggressive, and his fights are incredibly fun to watch. His fight versus Michael Aswell on the Contender Series, go back and watch that. Just an absolute fucking war. He was able to get the job done there by split decision. But with this fighting style, it's not going to be something that he can keep up for a long time because, you look at his first go-round on the Dana White Contender Series, got knocked out there by Tom Nolan. And look, the guy has no defense, like I said, puts himself on the firing line a lot. When he gets against high-level guys, he's going to get knocked out pretty often. And it's going to be sad to see because, he's a very entertaining fighter, very positive attitude. And also in his UFC debut, had an excellent performance against Lucas Alexander, who is a very, very good striker, very good kickboxer. Bogdan Grad, way less technical on the feet, was able to utilize some grappling in that match, but, just broke him with the marauding pressure, got the takedowns, and then in round 2 was able to finish him with a ground and pound TKO. And, he opened up as a minus 200 favorite there, closed as a plus 100 dog, and I had him at minus 110 and minus 200 for 4 units there. Very big cash for me on that card. And, I respect him a lot. I respect his game, but Muhammad Naimov, he's a lot cleaner on the feet. You look at his fight versus a guy that I respect a lot in Felipe Lima. They were going band for band on the feet. Very close fight. And until Felipe Lima was able to clutch up and get that 3rd round submission, Naimov was ahead on the cards. And, you look at the win over Nathaniel Wood. Very good win there against a, 20-ish ranked guy in the featherweight division. Even though there was some controversy surrounding that in terms of the fence grabs and stuff like that, there was a lot of fouls in that fight. Muhammad Naimov, he's a good fighter. You look at his KO versus Jamie Malarkey. I know it's Jamie Malarkey, but still You can see the technique on display, well-rounded as well. He has good grappling, good cardio, trains out of Colorado. The guy doesn't get tired. And yeah, I think that Muhammad Naimov gets this one done pretty easily. Look, Bogdan Grad, he's an absolute dog. I respect what he does in the octagon, but it's just not sustainable. You can't fight like that against this level of competition. I'm going to take Naimov to win a decision here because while I do think he does inflict a lot more damage, and I don't think Bogdan Grad's going to be able to implement the grappling and the jiu-jitsu like a Felipe Lima would, I think it's going to be a close fight where, Bogdan Grad's in there, but he's just getting tagged, he's getting clipped, he's getting cut up. He's making it a dog fight, but at the end of the day, Muhammad Naimov is going to be the clear winner. He's going to land a lot more clean strikes. He's going to be up on the numbers, and I think Bogdan Grad, he's going to get wobbled in this fight. But I don't think Naimov's the type of guy to be able to KO him. But, look, when he starts fighting guys like, I don't know, maybe a Hyder Emil or something like that, somebody that can really crack, a Kevin Vallejos, on the come up, guys like that are going to be real problems for Bogdan Grad. But yeah, I think Muhammad Naimov wins a decision here, 29-28. I think Bogdan Grad starts fast, starts good, but the damage just really starts to pile up on him. It's hard because I support that fight style, and normally I do like to pick a Marauder, a Benoit Saint Denis, a Yuri, a DDP, a Rainer de Ritter. But, in this spot, yeah, I think that, in the 145-pound division especially, these guys are so fast, they're so technical, so clean. It's harder to get away with that for, an extended period of time in your career. He's already taken a lot of damage. Naimov's going to be too much for him here in this spot. But keep an eye on Bogdan Grad. He's going to be a very exciting fighter in the UFC. I hope that even if he does take a few L's, I hope he sticks around for a long time because he's a very fun fighter. Next fight on the card, Motta versus Nazim Sadykov. Sadykov, well-rounded guy, hometown guy here, Azerbaijan fighter. And, Nicholas Motta, solid fighter. I believe he beat Misha Tate last time out. Yeah, Misha Tate. Whatever the dude's name is, Mahashate, the Chinese guy. He also beat Tom Nolan via TKO. Did get elbowed to shit versus Manuel Torres. But, we know the deal with Nicholas Motta, kind of a kill-or-be-killed fighter. Goes in there, good hands, gritty as well, just a gritty Brazilian fighter. But Nazim Sadykov, I think he's a lot cleaner. We saw he got a very nice head kick TKO last time versus Ismail Bonfim. I believe he head kicked him and got a cut there, or it might have been an elbow after the head kick. But, look, Nazim Sadykov, very technical fighter. He can implement the wrestling if he needs to. We saw that in the Vyacheslav Borishev fight on 295. He's been a little bit inactive, but, you got to look at the resume and a lot of respectable wins. The Evan Elder TKO, that looks good. We saw how good Evan Elder looked in his last fight and, got a rear naked choke over Terrence McKinney. We know that Nazim Sadykov is well-rounded, technical striker. He can mix in the grappling if he needs to. I think he's going to be able to get this one done pretty easily. I mean, look, Motta's good. He's aggressive. He may be able to land a couple power shots, but I trust in Sadykov being defensively sound, staying on the outside, using kicks at range, kind of frustrating Motta, changing levels when he needs to. I think he's going to be able to just win a technical decision here. I think we are going to have a lot of decisions on this card. Probably not a ton of finishes, but yeah, give me Sadykov. I think he's going to win a 30-27 here pretty comfortably. Our next fight on the card, we have Tofik Musayev versus Miktabek Orolbai. Yeah, look, Tofik Musayev, he fought in Ryzen, Bellator, was never anything that special, doesn't have a lot of volume. I mean, he can crack, he's gotten some TKOs, but not a lot of volume. I guess he's well-rounded for the level of competition that he's been facing, but look, Miktabek Orolbai, I think that Miktabek Orolbai is going to go in there and absolutely ragdoll this dude and beat his head into the canvas. Look, Miktabek Orolbai, when he got into the UFC, he dismantled Uros Medic. He ate a knee that would put down a rhinoceros in that fight. Kept on moving forward like nothing even happened. Took him down 1,000 times. Choked him out in the second round. He had an absolutely smothering performance. Then he looked great against Elvis Brenner. Got a little bit tired. Lost like one of the grappling exchanges early at the end of the first round in that fight. But other than that, displayed some good kicks, to be able to push Elvis Brenner against the fence. He was able to change levels. He has some good power in his hands. You look at some of his fights in the LFA, big right hands, big uppercuts to get KOs. He was able to knock down Elvis Brenner in the third round with a big right as well. His stand-up's improving. And, I had him on the money line there against Elvis Brenner. I had him in some parlays. And his last fight versus Mateusz Rebecki, one of the most memorable fights of all time. I mean, just an absolute fucking war, a scrap, one of the best fights in UFC history. I mean, this guy, even though he didn't get the job done, put on one of the most inspiring performances that you could ever see. Don't get me wrong, he fought like an absolute idiot, and he does look like a caveman from 2000 BC. I mean, his head is shaped like a basketball, and he looks like he should be from the Ice Age movie. But, like, he would literally be hanging out in the camp. Remember the camp with like the I don't even remember what they were called. The Ice Age people. That the fucking saber-toothed tiger took the child from. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That scene and that group. That's who Orolbai will be hanging out with. He's literally from like 2000 BC, and he used to hunt saber-toothed tigers, and he's still around. But, I got off track. We know the memes about Orolbai. He's a funny-looking cat, but he's an absolute dog. And in his fight versus Mateusz Rebecki, I had freaking $500 on this dude, and he lost that fight. But Mateusz Rebecki hit this dude with left hands that would put down a freaking elephant 3 times over. And Orolbai would eat this and just keep on moving forward. It was really unfortunate because he did fight like an idiot. Like I was mentioning, he did not shoot takedowns to be able to tire out Mateusz Rebecki, because we know Rebecki doesn't have a great gas tank. If Orolbai would have gone in there, smothered him with the pressure, got him tired, he would have been able to win that fight utilizing the grappling. But he kind of went out there, tried to box him up, and it cost him because he took a lot of damage, got his eye socket broken in the first round of that fight, kept on going. I swear that he did not see, when they held up the numbers in front of his face when his eye was swollen up really bad. There was no way he saw that shit. He just guessed, and he was able to get it right, kept on fighting. The dude's a warrior. And, beginning of the third round, Mateusz Rebecki clubs him with the meanest left hook you've ever seen in your entire life. The fucking big-ass, I don't even know, hematoma, the swelling that was on his eye, bursted open. This dude falls to the ground, dies, comes back to life, and then gets in top position and starts laying the ground and pound. This dude's built different. He can take an insane amount of damage. He has the chin of literally like a goddamn woolly mammoth. Like, he has the chin of a woolly mammoth. The durability's insane. The pressure's insane. The cardio's crazy. Look, unless he's fighting a guy like Mateusz Rebecki, who can just beam him with the craziest power shots you've ever seen in your life, who can hang with him in the grappling, who's like, a stocky motherfucker that's really hard to take down. Look, I definitely overrated Orolbai and underrated Mateusz Rebecki going into that fight. But look, Orolbai is going to fucking destroy this PFL jobber. End of story. Orolbai, second round TKO, ground and pound. He's getting it done. Come on now. Curtis Blaydes versus Rizvan Kuniev. Look, Rizvan Kuniev, decent fighter. I'm pretty sure he does train out of the same gym as Ankalaev. We saw him get a nice TKO on the Dana White Contender Series. Definitely a juicer. I'm pretty sure he did get suspended from the PFL due to a failed drug test. Making his UFC debut here. They've tried to make this fight 2 times, and, it's got canceled both. I don't know why they're so, bullish on making this fight. But, Curtis Blaydes, Rizvan Kuniev. Look, Rizvan Kuniev, he's good on the feet. I'm sure that he's decently well-rounded, but it's the same thing with Patricia Pitbull. It's the same thing with fucking Patchy Mix. These guys never fucking win, and you just have to pick against these Bellator PFL guys. They are not on the same level as the UFC fighters, especially not a guy like Curtis Blaydes, who has been around in this division forever, who has fought the highest levels of competition. And who's Curtis Blaydes losing to? Come on now. Tom Aspinall, the most dangerous human being to ever walk the face of the fucking planet, the fastest, most athletic, dynamic heavyweight of all time. The dude's a nightmare. No one's ever going to beat Tom Aspinall. Except for maybe Jones, but we'll never see that fight. Tom Aspinall, literally going to be the heavyweight GOAT. You can't fault him for that. Sergey Pavlovich, literally a refrigerator. I mean, you're talking about the highest cream of the crop, highest level guys in the UFC heavyweight division. Francis Ngannou back in the day, Derek Lewis, the most KOs in UFC history. You're talking about the most dangerous power punchers in the sport's history that Curtis Blaydes is losing to. Now, Rivzan Kuniev is not going to be on that level. And you look at, Curtis Blaydes in the past, you think about some of his, classic performances against, Rosenstrike, Volkov, Junior Dos Santos, Shamil Abdurakhimov, Alistair Overeem, Alexei Olenek, Mark Hunt, had some old head wins as well. Curtis Blaydes, we know he has the wrestling. He's gotten better with the striking. He's going to have a reach advantage in this fight, I'm pretty sure. He's good with the long-range 1-2s. And unless it's a guy that has proven to be super dangerous in the heavyweight division, knocking everybody out, like an Ngannou, like a Pavlovich, like an Aspinall, I don't think Blaydes is going to have too much trouble. We saw him get taken down by Jailton Almeida, but Jailton Almeida is like super athletic, so quick, so slick. Rivzan Kuniev is going to be a lot plottier than that. Unless Kuniev tags him with something clean, Curtis, I think he'll be able to eat it. Unless it's, like I said, unless it's one of these guys that just has ungodly power. Curtis Blaydes is normally okay in these fights. I think Curtis is able to utilize the takedowns, use the razor blade elbows, and kind of just get himself a round 2 or 3. Late rounds, kind of exhaustion, TKO on the ground. I think Rivzan Kuniev goes out there early, swings for the fences, gets a little tired. Curtis weathers an early storm, kind of jabs him up, gets out of the first, gets the takedowns going second and third, elbows him, gets himself a nice TKO. So yeah, give me Curtis Blaydes, round 2 TKO. Holding it down for the UFC. All right, co-main event. We have Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes. I'm going to take Ignacio Bahamondes here. Look, Rafael Fiziev, he's fought my favorite fighter, Justin Gaethje, twice, and I thought he was going to win both of those fights, to be honest. And he, Justin Gaethje pulled through. Fiziev, he's a very talented striker, but the cardio does give him issues. You look back at some of his really good wins, Bobby Green, Rafael dos Anjos, Renato Moicano. Those are some of his best performances. But, none of those guys are very similar to Ignacio Bahamondes. The most similar stylistic matchup in terms of Bahamondes in his past fights was Ludovic Klein. And I have heard some people, speaking about the fact that Ludovic Klein, was able to close the distance, tag him up with the hands. But a lot of that kind of came down to the fact that Ludovic Klein was implementing a lot of takedowns in that fight offensively. Ignacio was hanging in there on the feet, make no mistake. And, Ludovic Klein is a better boxer than Fiziev. Fiziev, he kind of relies on the big clinch knees, the big Muay Thai kicks. Fiziev, he definitely has a path to victory here, but it's just hard to go with him in terms of the momentum here because Ignacio, he's been looking great. We saw the head kick TKO versus Christos Giagos. We've seen good performances from him in the past. That nasty spinning heel kick he got against Roosevelt Roberts. He's a natural striker. I didn't like the fact that he got held down last time out versus Jalen Turner. But at the end of the day, the fight that makes me the most confident picking Ignacio Bahamondes here was his performance versus Manuel Torres, who, is an aggressive Muay Thai style of fighter, similar to Fiziev, orthodox fighter as well. And, he came in there guns a-blazing, and Ignacio Bahamondes schooled him. He's been working closely with really high-level guys like Bilal Muhammad. He's been on a streak. He's been staying very active. I think that the range could definitely give Fiziev issues here. Fiziev does fight with an ego. He tends to get over-aggressive. We see him get over-aggressive in the Justin Gaethje fights, kind of running into uppercuts in the pockets, extended exchanges, kind of getting to him, and then he gets, a little bit frustrated, kind of throws the kitchen sink and gets himself a little more tired. I could see that happening here. I could see Ignacio playing it really slow, tapping the legs at range, teeping him whenever Fiziev tries to close the distance. I think that counter, that pull, right hand will definitely be there for Ignacio Bahamondes. And I think Ignacio Bahamondes knocks out Rafael Fiziev with that pull counter in the exact same fashion that he did Manuel Torres. Look, Fiziev took a lot of damage in both of the fights with Justin. And Justin's slowing down at this point in his career. He just is. I'm Justin's biggest fan. I can tell from the eye test that Justin's not as good as he used to be. And Fiziev still wasn't able to close the gap. I know it was on short notice, but a guy like Ignacio is going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with, I think, because, Fiziev, he likes to fight at range, and I think Ignacio is going to be able to use his reach, use his length, keep this at range, and if Fiziev does try to get over aggressive and close the distance, I think Ignacio can snipe him just like he did Manuel Torres. So, yeah, give me Ignacio. I'm going to take him to win by first round TKO. I like the finishing potential. He has shown that he can go 3 rounds in the past. We've shown that his power will carry over as well. He's gotten late rounds TKOs. I don't see Fiziev mixing in any grappling. The only reason he was able to take down Justin is because Justin threw that leg kick, and Fiziev knew that leg kick was coming. Justin starts every single fight with a right leg kick. So he knew that was coming, and he was able to get the takedown off of that. I don't think he takes down Ignacio here. I think Ignacio appeases him up for about 2.5 minutes and then slips him onto a mean right pull counter. So yeah, give me Ignacio, round 1 TKO. We move on to the main event of the evening, Khalil Rountree versus Jamal Hill. I've been very good at predicting these two fights, so I'm quite confident in this prediction. I'm taking Khalil Rountree to get the job done via TKO. Now, there is a world where he gets tired and then, maybe gets TKO'd in the 4th, 5th round, but I think the first 3 are 100% going to Khalil, and I think that he can actually get to the judges' scorecards. A 48-47 decision for Khalil Rountree is not, off the cards per se in this one, but I think he gets the job done by TKO here. We've seen Jamal Hill knocked out twice, back-to-back in his last 2 fights, and, I've been very vocal about this for a very long time. I've never thought Jamal Hill was that great. I think he's one of the most overrated champions of all time, right up there with Sean Strickland. Not overrated, but I think he's one of the worst champions in UFC history, up there with, a Sean Strickland, a Cody Garbrandt, in terms of the level that they are at. Look, who did he really beat coming up to the top? Jimmy Crute, Thiago Santos, and then beat an old, withered Glover Teixeira who just came off a war with Yuri. I knew that he was going to lose via TKO to Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka. I made like a 20-minute prediction for the Yuri and Jamal Hill fight because everyone was picking Hill to beat Yuri, and I knew Yuri was getting that one done. And had a big bet on Yuri there. Awesome fight, but Yuri schooled him, man, and we see that Hill, he has no footwork. He's super sloppy. Everyone was talking about how he's a way more technical boxer than Yuri going into that fight. The dude has no technique. He fights like a slugger. He fights like, a drunk uncle at the barbecue off of half a bottle of Hennessy. No technique, just winging punches. And, look, he has a good body kick. He's got a few good techniques. Look, he's an effective fighter at times, but Khalil Rountree is going to be way faster. He's going to be way sharper. He hits harder as well. Jamal Hill, overrated power. He's only ever knocked out Jimmy Crute. Literally the only person he's ever knocked out. The OSP TKO was an exhaustion TKO, a volume TKO. Same thing with the Thiago Santos fight. Didn't finish Glover Teixeira after landing the kitchen sink 30 times on him. Khalil Rountree, we know the power he has, being able to finish up guys, even at the level of a Smith, a Chris Daukaus. We see the power. Don't forget about the Gokhan Saki TKO back in the day. And look, I picked Khalil Rountree to beat Alex Pereira. Got that pick wrong, but everyone thought that it was going to be a walk in the park for Alex. I knew that that was going to be a very difficult fight. Khalil Rountree was up on the scorecards before the stoppage. And, that also led me into choosing Magomed Ankalaev over Alex Pereira because I saw what Khalil was able to do. And it was obvious that Magomed was going to be able to do way better than Khalil. Magomed's twice the fighter that Khalil is. But look, we saw Jamal Hill getting countered with straight lefts from Yuri. We saw him get knocked out by Alex Pereira, who is a great striker, but a lot of damage since that injury that Jamal Hill took. He did take a lot of damage earlier in his career as well, and he's never had good defense. Even in his UFC debut, I forgot the guy he was fighting, but he got tagged on the chin like 30 times, and DC was literally like, Jamal Hill's going to have to fix that. When he gets at the higher levels, he's not going to be able to get away with, just using his athleticism and not having clean defense and clean technique. And that's exactly what's happened, in the later portion of his career. Khalil Rountree, we know about, the Eric Anders fights and his Muay Thai style. He's decently effective with it. And, it was pretty effective against Pereira. Like I said, he was up on the scorecards. And, in terms of both of these guys being southpaws, I think that actually will favor Jamal Hill. but I just don't think that Jamahal Hill is going to be able to get out of the way of these blitzes of Khalil. Khalil's so fast compared to Jamahal Hill. So fast. The fast twitch muscle fiber, the athleticism, it's not even comparable. You know, like I said, Khalil might gas, but I think he's going to have the first 3 rounds in the books. I think one of the main reasons he gassed out against Pereira anyway was the fact that it was at altitude in Salt Lake City. It's not going to be the case here. I think that'll help his cardio. You know, we saw in the Smith fight, his power, you know, did translate and it did carry all the way up into 3rd round. You know, the Dustin Jacoby fight, I think it was a robbery, but you can make the argument for Khalil Rountree, and Dustin Jacoby is a very good striker, and Khalil was in there with him. I like that 3 rounds of experience against a guy that's going to be similar to a Jamahal Hill. Khalil Rountree got the job done there by a split decision. I think all signs really do point towards Khalil here. You know, even in the OSP and Thiago Santos fights, Jamahal Hill was getting tagged with, you know, clean techniques, left kicks, left straights down the pipe. Yuri was tagging him up with that counter left straight. Khalil Rountree, I think, is going to be able to do the same thing. And, yeah, I think he's going to be able to get a TKO in the 2nd round here. I think Jamahal Hill is going to come out doing good, landing volume, but I think Khalil is going to end up dropping him in the 1st round. Jamahal Hill, he's going to kind of have that look of deer in the headlights like he did against Yuri. And I think he's going to kind of get overzealous. I think he's going to try and throw a lead uppercut in the pocket, very similarly to how he did against Yuri. And I think Khalil is going to nail him with a left hand over the top and put him out, and follow that up with some mean ground and pound. Khalil Rountree working with Christian Knowles here for this camp. He's his new striking coach. You know, I don't really know how I feel about that. I think I kind of like Coach John Wood from Syndicate MMA in the corner of Khalil Rountree a little more than a Muay Thai coach. Christian Knowles is Jonathan Haggerty's Muay Thai coach. You know, I really just I don't put too much stock into that in terms of the striking coach. I think he's going to fight the same way regardless. In reality, I actually think it's a little bit concerning because I don't want him to try to fight like a pure Muay Thai style against a Jamahal Hill, because that's not really going to work too good against Jamahal Hill, who does match him on the frame, who can go kick for kick with him, who I actually think would be able to get the better of a fight like that. Khalil needs to be aggressive. He needs to blitz. You know, he needs to use the straight shots like he did against Alex. I think if he's out there trying to play the, you know, Bangkok ready, you know, light lead leg, teeping and low kicking, it could work. But I think if he tries to go for a TKO earlier, it could work out better for him. His defense tends to be better, you know, when he's fighting that style like he did against Pereira. You know, his defense was very good in that fight, kept his hands nice and tight. You know, we saw when he tried to use that style against Ion Kutalaba, it didn't work out well for him. He kind of just got blitzkrieged with straight shots and takedowns. Jamahal Hill could mix in some wrestling here, but I don't really expect that. I think Khalil Rountree is able to get the job done here, round 2 TKO. I think he's going to be faster. I think he's going to be able to beat Jamahal Hill to the punch, in the pocket especially. And yeah, the knockdowns are realistically going to be inevitable. We know how hard Khalil hits. We know how fast he is. He's going to be able to close the distance. Jamahal Hill just always leaves his chin on the firing line. Khalil's going to find it eventually. And, you know, even if this fight goes 5, I could see Khalil getting a 10-8 early in the 1st or 2nd. I think he does win the first 3 regardless. So yeah, Khalil could win a decision here, but I'm going to lean TKO. So yeah, give me Rountree to win by 3rd round TKO here in the main event. If you guys enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Enjoy the card this weekend and have a good rest of your day.